All right, welcome. So this video is all about the dangers of PMO on a young mind. This one is specific because I know that me personally and a lot of my peers growing up struggled with this really early on in life. I remember I had friends who started talking about it. You know, it was the cool thing to talk about at the lunch table apparently. But back when we were in like middle school, right? Middle school was when kids started talking about it as if it was normalized. Um, and from that point on, it was very, very clear that there was a distinction between the people who glorified it and a very clear distinction between those two and those who seemingly didn't indulge in the same things, right? At a certain point, you could see that a lot of the people who were obsessed with porn early on, or PMO, they actually became obsessed with drugs at the same rate, right? So these are the same people who started smoking Juuls in middle school still, and then started smoking weed as that became cool, so on and so forth, right? And so the issue with this is that one thing that I'm going to talk about within this video is that it basically programs your mind to actually be more interested in instant pleasure than delayed gratification, which is actually building yourself up over a long period of time. So a good example to show you this is there were certain kids who were obsessed with sports early on. Like they loved their sport. In our school, it was football mainly. Mostly people played football. But then I noticed as some of these kids who I talked about, who I mentioned, that were very into it early on and thought it was the coolest thing in the world and would brag about it and stuff like that. These were the same people who, as we get into high school, lost interest in their sport and started just smoking weed. They started making money, having sex, and that was their lifestyle now. And it was very clear that their mind had been wired for this instant gratification. And so this video is just going to teach you the actual dangers of utilizing porn, not utilizing, but using porn. I say utilizing as if it's like a tool or something that we use. I use utilize when I'm talking about tips and tricks from my videos, so that's why that's funny. But essentially, why the use of it leads to mental deterioration, leads to a need for instant gratification, and develops a lust within you. And I'm going to explain the actual problem with this lust specifically. Before we start the video, for those of you guys who are serious on your self-improvement and would like to progress at a rapid pace, or would like better education or a community regarding self-improvement, self-development, and goal achievement, go down and click the first link in the description where you can sign up for early access to the Academy of Self-Mastery. I'm no longer doing the Instagram DMs thing, but you can DM me on Instagram if you have questions about my services. But we are doing we have a proper email list now. So you can go and you can sign up for the Academy of Self-Mastery early access, and you will get an email as soon as we launch. Without further ado, let's get into the actual video. My story with porn is very simple. I just wanted to highlight the fact that using porn early in my life actually delayed my success a lot, right? So the use of porn when I was starting to grow up, like really mature, it derailed me from this place where I was feeling as though I needed to improve, feeling as though I needed to progress. And very quickly I found that I could deter that need using porn, meaning I could get myself to a place of actually being comfortable where I was at by using porn. And so I didn't need to feed into this need for me to change, to transform, to evolve. I didn't feed into this need for me to progress and move rapidly towards my goals. I found it was easier to just kind of settle with where I was at. If I was using porn, if I was smoking weed, if I was, scrolling on social media. But without these things, I had this, and I still do always have this constant need, this fire inside of me to improve, to grow, to reach the next level. And so letting myself use porn, and I mean, I didn't know much about it at the time, but allowing myself to use porn early on actually delayed my ability to start progressing at a rapid pace, to start actually moving tangibly towards my goals. And so I kind of stayed stuck for a very long period of time. And This doesn't even talk about or get into any of the mental, the neural not benefits, the neural negatives. So the negatives as far as your brain's health goes. This is just talking about success and goal achievement, right? It delayed my ability to achieve my goals to where I was fully convinced that I'd be able to achieve most of my goals within high school. And I basically completely deterred myself off that track by allowing myself to stay stuck in this cycle, in this loop. And eventually I learned more about it, and eventually I found ways to break that loop, break that cycle. But it was a very difficult cycle to break. And so this is why I'm going to give you guys the information about why you should break this cycle. And hopefully, if you guys are avid watchers or avid viewers of the channel, I talk about sexual transmutation a lot. And so hopefully you started to implement some of those things. This is more of an informational video though. So the first section is why porn is such a negative. Why is it such a negative thing? Why does it cause so much controversy? Why do so many people talk about it as if it's a bad thing? Why do some people support and think it's a good thing, right? So this is specifically going against everything anybody says that it is a positive in any capacity, right? So if you hear someone say, oh yeah, orgasm once a week or something like that is healthy, that's incorrect. The reality of it is that we have wired ourselves to feel that we need this type of gratification. We have wired ourselves to release our vital energy, our vital force through sexuality. But that isn't the only outlet for it, and that's what I teach within sexual transmutation. So we're just specifically going to discuss why it's a negative. Over-sexualization and rewiring of the brain. So the main thing is it wires your brain for what we call over-sexualization. Over-sexualization is when you basically glorify the sexual force, the sexual energy, and the sexual act. Glorifying it in such a sense that you derive some form of pleasure from it, some form of gratification from it, and you feel a need for it, right? So sex, no matter what orientation, whether you're pure of heart, whether you are full of lust and you've been watching porn and you've been in this world of over-sexualization, regardless, it is pleasurable, right? That isn't something we take away by getting into sexual transmutation. In fact, it's amplified through transmutation, but we are no longer obsessed with the physical gratification of it. And so the key with understanding this is that not being obsessed with the gratification of it essentially just means that we no longer need the physical satisfaction that comes from actually having sex. We are able to rest and relax into the vitality that it gives us to hold and retain and transmute this energy. What does this mean? This means that the feeling that you get of invigoration, of vitality when you are engaging in the sexual act is something that we can maintain at all times if we learn how to. But the problem is most are wired for over-sexualization, and this is caused by porn. So porn is one of the leading factors for the over-sexualization of the mind, specifically in men, funny enough, but there are also implications for women as well. So it's just as bad for women. It's just seems that men are more prone to this specific addiction because of the visual aspects. So men are typically attracted visually based on what they can see. Women have different attraction points. It's typically about, I've heard it's about what they hear, so what men say. There's a short that talks about how basically like men lie and women wear makeup. But beyond that, right, that's all just like controversy. But the reality of it is, if men are more prone to it visually, that's why porn is an issue, and women, it tends to be more literature. So, I forget the name of it, but there's a name for specifically literature that's basically porn. Reading books that are essentially porn. But they're both the same thing. They're wired. They wire you a similar way. It's just, for whatever reason, one gender is more attracted to one than the other. But regardless of whether you're a man or a woman, if you engage in any type of pornography, it starts to rewire your brain to seek sexual gratification. And that's the issue. When you are seeking sexual gratification, you're seeking the release and you are seeking the pleasure associated with sex, you now divert yourself from the reality of what sexuality is, right? Sexuality is a way of combining energies, and it is a way of creation, a form of creation. So the obvious example of this is having a kid, having a child. But when you get into the more esoteric sides of this practice, you can realize, and you do realize very quickly, that it's more about the manifestation of your goals. Sexual energy, when properly orientated, when properly curated and cultivated and directed, is the unit by which you achieve your goals. So the rate at which you can grow is based on the amount of sexual energy you contain and can control. So with this, when we are wired for the instant gratification of sex, we are wired to lose this energy. And so therefore we completely derail ourselves from the true benefits of any form of sexuality. The next thing is it disrupts the natural flow of your development. So it actually disrupts the natural flow of your growth, right? Because sexual energy builds up inside of us, and that is what drives us towards most of the big changes that happen throughout puberty. Most of the intellectual changes that happen are driven through sexual energy. A lot of people, if you've been an athlete your whole life, you have insane bouts of growth and progression within this period of time. Because sexual energy is starting to build inside of us, we're being able to start actually utilizing it. But when we use porn, we find release for this energy instead of forcing ourselves to grow in order to handle the capacity, grow our capacity in order to handle the amount of energy we're building up. And so we learn to release it instead. And this programs us to kind of stay stagnant and stuck where we are. And it programs us to release this energy every time enough of it builds to drive any type of change, right? The discomfort that we feel is driving us towards change. But when we don't change, it becomes painful, it becomes dense, and it hurts. It's uncomfortable. Hurts not in the sense that it's like a physical pain, but hurts in the sense that there's a psychological tension. If you aren't willing to go about the change required, it's very typical to just lose and release this energy. So the issue is that if we're doing this too young, it can actually disrupt our development as we're going through puberty. And so that's why we see a lot of, people in their 20s without facial hair. Unfortunately, I'm caught by that same issue. I'm not in my 20s yet, but I am fairly old for just starting to grow proper facial hair. This is a good example. Another good example is physical development, right? Our bodies are meant to be muscular, lean, toned, and this is a natural byproduct of having the right amount of testosterone. When we're releasing our sexual energy, we kind of stay looking like kids, you know what I mean? A little bit flabby, a little bit low muscle mass, and this happens because of too much estrogen in the body and not enough testosterone, and porn will kill testosterone, period, end of story. That's not a debate. It will kill testosterone. Orgasm kills testosterone as well. So with these two things together, you're essentially cutting your development off short. Yes, you will still grow and you'll still develop. Your body and your brain are resilient, all right? So we will find ways. Nature will always find ways. We will find ways to progress and make up for this loss. But you are disrupting a key factor of your development by doing this. And so the way that we fix it is just to stop using porn and continue doing what we're doing, maybe start exercising, a better diet. And with these things, we can make up for the loss, but there is definitely a loss in our development and in our development pattern. The next thing is you never learn to manage sexual energy. So I kind of mentioned this in the last part, but this is a very important piece, which is that you don't actually learn to manage your sexual energy. You feel all of this invigoration of energy and all of this vitality, and then it becomes too much and it flip-flops. And so every time you feel this urge, you feel overwhelmed by it. When you learn sexual transmutation, you get the same urge, but you actually have a better way of controlling and managing and directing that energy. And so it feels like kind of like I said, it feels invigorating, like vitality, instead of it feeling like an itch you need to scratch. That might be relatable for a lot of people. It almost feels like an itch that you have to scratch. Mind you, if you learn to use this energy properly though and direct it, it will truly scratch that itch. Whenever you release the energy, it doesn't really scratch that itch. You're always still kind of craving a little bit more. Whereas when you learn sexual transmutation, you do scratch that itch, that psychological and energetic itch that you have, which is just to move in direct energy. It is to get this energy moving. However, we become confused with porn because we associate the movement of energy with sexuality and release of the sexual energy, instead of associating it with building and growing and adapting to our new challenges in life. The next thing is it programs you for instant gratification within relationships. So this is very key. When we get into relationships, a lot of people, I am very fortunate in the sense that I didn't fall into this same trap, but a lot of people get into relationships for the sake of the pleasure, for the sake of sex, for the sake of enjoying the company of another person, which is fine. But when that's the main focus, it can completely disrupt the actual process that's happening within a sexual relationship. So any form of sexual relationship, I don't necessarily believe in or support gay relationships, at least as far as something like sexual alchemy goes. But at the same time, I don't diss on any type of differentiation between sexual relationships. So if you are in a sexual relationship, whether straight or gay, monogamous, polygamous, well, I'll get into it, but polygamous relationships actually go against what I'm speaking on. Similar with gay relationships, but at the same time, this is just for anybody to use as an example. So if you are in a relationship, any type of sexual relationship, if you are focused on the sexual gratification, you will not be able to see the true challenges and the true benefit of being in that relationship with another person. So within a sexual relationship, there are essentially a feminine and a masculine. This is most obvious within a monogamous relationship, a man and a woman. But gay relationships, there's always a dynamic where one has more of a feminine polarity, one has a more masculine polarity, even if they're the same sexual gender. So basically you have the opposite polarities. And what happens is there are challenges that are brought up by you being in two opposite polarities. And this is a positive thing. What's happened in the modern day is people have started to try and close the gap, essentially, between the feminine and the masculine polarity, right? And this is one of the worst things that you can do for sexual relationships. But at the same time, it defeats the purpose of a sexual relationship. The sexual relationship is supposed to be opposite, two opposites attracting together. And what happens within that is there are energies, very intense, very strong energies brought about. There are a strong revelation of who you are, who your partner may be. And it brings out aspects of your identities, both of you, that essentially the magnetism and the polarity between the two of you brings out all of who each of you are. And so this forces the two of you together to work through these challenges that come up. It was a very complicated way of saying that, but I'm probably going to have my editor cut that up and fix that up. But you essentially are bringing out all these aspects of yourselves, and together you're able to work through all of these challenges that come up as a result. And so what's happening is in most relationships, in modern relationships, when these challenges come up, what happens is the couple breaks up, right? The couple leave. They split off and then they go to the next thing. Because all they're seeking is that period of time, the honeymoon phase, that basically recharges all their sexual energy. They feel all this invigoration. They feel sexually attracted to their partner. And then they wear all of that down by having as much sex as they can. And then once that is over, that honeymoon stage ends. By the way, for those of you who don't know, the honeymoon stage isn't real. Orgasm causes that energy to leave, and once they lose that energy, then they clash, they conflict. Their energies are going against each other. They're not actually able to utilize or work with the flow of, they're not able to work with this polarity, right? They're not able to work with these challenges, and so they break up, or they cheat, or whatever, right? They stop getting that same sexual gratification from their partner because of the loss of energy, and so they cheat, or they go to porn, or whatever. Now, the key here is understanding delayed gratification with relationships. The greatest benefit of a relationship is the fact, at least from my perspective, the fact that a woman has the power to drive you towards your goals, right? A woman, whoever your woman may be, has the power to bring out the greatest image of who you are, right? The absolute best image of who you are, present that to you, and then drive you towards going in that direction. And for some, it's very difficult to find a woman like this, but a tip for finding the right partner is alignment. If you find alignment within yourself, if you have 100% certainty that you will only settle for this type of person, it is very likely you find it, so long as you don't get yourself discouraged because it may take longer than you expect. But essentially, within a relationship, you stay, you stick it out, you push through, and you work through the challenges that come up in order to get to that end point. There may be periods of time where you're not as sexually attracted to each other, and so you may look at this as, oh, I don't like this person anymore, I need a new one, I need something new. That is the instant gratification trap of it. That is what porn has taught you to look for. Porn has taught you to look for the best and most stimulating image at that moment, and continuously do so, right? In reality, the most stimulating moment is the present moment. The most stimulating thing is the exact challenge that's presenting itself to you now. It's just that we have associated it to be the sexual pleasure, and that's it. If it's not that, then it's not enough. And that is the issue with porn. And that is the issue with most relationships nowadays. And the reason that that is an issue for most relationships nowadays is because pretty much everybody is addicted to porn. Don't want to say everybody, but there's a very good majority of people who are addicted to porn, especially within the younger generations. And maybe this is just my perspective. This is from what I have physically seen with my eyes, and what I've witnessed and experienced within my own school years, high school, middle school, and just what I've learned from the online space as well. There's a very large audience for people looking for sexual transmutation, semen retention, and quitting porn specifically. So obviously it's a big issue, and I like to say that I would blame 100% of relationship issues on pornography, and if not pornography, a misunderstanding of sexuality and what it is. So what can you actually do to prevent or heal this issue? The best thing to do is prevent it. Obviously, stop yourself before you start getting into it. Do not get into it in the first place. However, most of you guys watching this are probably already that far. So how can we heal from this issue? How can we completely rewrite and rewire our brains back to delayed gratification within relationships? So the first way to heal yourself from porn and the use of porn over the years is sexual transmutation. I say the first thing, but really this is the main thing, right? The main thing is sexual transmutation. You need to learn how to transmute this energy, because you can only quit porn for so long. If you find yourself needing an outlet for sexual energy, you will be driven back to porn. And so the key is to learn a new outlet. It isn't to suppress the sexual urge, it is to find a healthy outlet for that energy. And so a healthy outlet looks like exercise, it looks like learning, it looks like reading, it looks like training in some capacity, it looks like work, it looks like, so on and so forth. Any form of delayed gratification, any form of building, self-improvement, any form of business development, career pursuit, goal pursuit, whatever it may be, any form of growth specifically will be a proper outlet for this energy. So I have a ton of videos on sexual transmutation. I have a ton more coming out. And I will be releasing an ebook on sexual transmutation as well. So this is obviously a big topic that I talk about a lot, and one that I have a lot of key information on. And so I will be releasing a lot of deep content on how to do this. But the basics of how to do it is to learn how to redirect your mind and your mental energy. If you learn how to redirect your attention off of the physical urge of it, off of the mental urge, right? Your mind starts to loop on what you might want, right? Once you can redirect yourself off of that and onto something like work, something like training, exercise, and sustain that attention, it'll be easier and easier to direct this energy towards those things. The next thing is to let your brain heal by rewiring it for delayed gratification. Again, I have a ton of videos on instant and delayed gratification. Go check those out. But the main thing is to start to do activities throughout the day that support delayed gratification, so that you start to wire your brain to look for delayed gratification instead of instant gratification. And the key with this is to remove any other instant gratification activities you have, any other habits that you have, like smoking weed, nicotine if you smoke cigarettes, alcohol and drinking, what else? Social media use, junk food. All of these things, if you start to remove them and rewire your brain for delayed gratification through these activities, right? Replace them with more time working, reading, learning, exercise. You start to replace these things. Well, then what happens is your brain starts to become wired for the delayed gratification versus being wired for instant gratification. And so when it comes time to fight or battle with the urge, right? Let's say it's 9 p.m. at night, and this is when you would normally go and watch porn. What you do is, instead of giving into that urge, now you've wired your brain for delayed gratification. So your brain might look for different options, right? It might look at it a little bit differently, and you can use this slightly different perspective to just say no, all right? Just leave it alone and find an alternative. Okay, I've been wiring myself for delayed gratification. I have all these healthy habits now. I don't need this. What can I do instead? Well, I could just read my book, or I could just go to sleep, honestly. It's 9 p.m. Essentially, you're teaching yourself to look for different options, right? And then when it comes time to fight with the specific thing, when this one being porn, you actually have a base of evidence that you have been able to rewrite certain addictions, and you have a basic wiring towards instant gratification, basic wiring for delayed gratification, and therefore you're able to choose similarly based on that one decision. Think of it, if you 5 out of 10 things that you do out of the day, let's say you do exactly 10 things in the day, right? 10 activities from start to finish in the day. If 5 of those 10 activities are instant gratification activities and it gets to be nighttime, which one are you more likely to choose? If you're addicted to porn and you've been watching it, you're more likely to choose porn. If 2 out of your 10 activities throughout the day were instant gratification and the rest were delayed gratification, you're a little bit less likely. If 0 of your activities throughout the day are instant gratification and all delayed gratification, and you get to nighttime and you have the urge again for porn, it'll be very easy, not very easy, but it'll be significantly easier than it was before to choose to just not do it and do something else instead. The key is not choosing to do nothing though. Say, oh, I'm not gonna watch porn, so you have nothing available. It's, I'm not gonna watch porn, but I could just read my book instead. It's always, I'm gonna do this instead, right? There's always something else to do instead. The next thing I have is to just realize the damage that you've done and then quit for good. Like, really let it go. And the key with this is to understand that the damage that you've done is considered to be permanent, but it's not truly permanent. And the reason I say this is you could have done permanent damage, and we could say it like this, but if that just invokes fear, if that invokes a feeling of, well, it's not worth it to quit, then why even talk like that in the first place, right? However, it's good to look at the fact that you cannot continue doing this if you think that you're going to be successful. You cannot continue doing this if you want to be on a better path, if you want to become the best version of yourself, whatever. If it's blocking you from becoming the best version of yourself, it has to go. If there's a chance that it could have permanently blocked you from doing so, it definitely has to go. And so the reason I say it's considered to be permanent but actually not is because with enough work, with enough effort, we can rewire our brains. We can fix and heal the damage that's been done. It will just take effort, it will take time, and specifically if you learn transmutation, it'll happen a lot faster, but it will take time, it will take effort, and it will take consistency. right? You can't start and then fall off and then expect to just be able to start from where you left off, right? Because you always regress if you stop progressing. So just realize the damage that you've done. A good option for those of you trying to quit porn, if you look up the easy method, or the easy peasy method rather, look up the easy peasy method on Google or whatever, and they have an audiobook and they have an ebook that you can read. It's all completely free as well. But that is a really good option for you to just understand the damage that's been done, understand why it's such an issue, and it's a very good way to help you quit. I am going to be doing a synthesis on the ebook at a certain point. So realize what you've done to your brain, really just to your brain, but also to your body, right? The damage you've done to your body, your brain, and just quit, right? Just let it go. And the moment you quit is the moment that you can start healing and recovery. The last thing is just understanding that sexuality is a positive thing, right? Sexuality is a positive thing. Sexual energy is a good thing. It's healthy for you. It is good for you. What is unhealthy is losing it on a consistent basis. And so therefore what's unhealthy is giving into the urge of lust, right? Separate lust and sexuality for a second, and you can realize that sexual energy by itself makes you feel energized, makes you feel good, makes you feel more strong, more powerful, more concise, more aware. All of these things are good things. It's just the misdirection of this energy is the problem. The perversion of its energy is the problem. And we are 100% responsible for how we use this energy. So by us choosing to pervert this energy, we are the causes of our own suffering. But at the same time, sexual energy by itself is a neutral unit, right? It's just based on how we use it. So we can just as equally use it positively. Lust, however, is the thing that is causing us to use it negatively. Lust is separate from sexual energy. So I'm going to go into the last section here, and this is going to be the real problem with descending into lust. The first thing is over-sexualizing women, right? So this is an issue because women in particular are not sexual creatures. They are not sexual objects, right? The programming of porn has taught us to view them as such, right? But that isn't the reality of what a woman is, right? If you talk about like the benefits of having a woman, sex is like down here. It's like this little minute detail. It's like, oh yeah, that part's cool. And not a lot of people would understand this because of how much they glorify sex and how addicted they are to it. But in reality, this is only causing you to be able to only ever experience the surface levels of having a sexual relationship. Within a sexual relationship, there are infinite numbers of benefits for both parties if you guys learn to use your sexual energy correctly. And that's the issue. Most people are so obsessed with lust that they over-sexualize women. They look at women when they're walking by. They feel this need for gratification. And so they only ever seek women in order to satisfy that. And if that's the extent by which you are seeking a sexual relationship, you will never experience even half of the true benefits of being in one. And so the reason this is an issue is because it basically diverts you away from being able to ever give attention to some of the true gifts that a woman can provide within a relationship. And this is also why most men feel lonely even in relationships. Also why women feel underappreciated in relationships, because they feel like they're only being viewed as sexual objects and nothing more. So we can fix this whole issue by killing lust. And the way we kill lust is by working directly with our internal state, our internal energies, our mind, in order to kill lust, kill egos, and redirect that energy back towards a positive change and a positive life, right? Just creating a positive life for ourselves. The next thing is the desire for release. Lust causes this desire for release of the sexual energy, right? And a lot of people may be confused because they think, well, everybody releases the sexual energy. Isn't that what you do when you have sex? And that is incorrect. That is only a form of lust, right? That is lust expressing itself, as well as ego has a very interesting way of protecting itself. So sexual energy is the one purpose of it is to dissolve ego, dissolve lust, and it can completely kill lust, right? And so what ego does is it feeds off of the release of its energy, because that essentially strengthens, I guess you could say, the ego. So the desire for release within sexual relationships is actually going to do the opposite of what you think. You think that it is going to satisfy the sexual need, and what it does is it only temporarily satisfies it, because you blow a circuit, essentially. You blow the circuit of your sexual energy, and so it goes dim for a period of time. However, that does not mean that you satisfied the sexual craving. In fact, you only fed it more, right? You fed into it, and so therefore it's going to be amplified the next time. And so that's the problem. We have created this desire for release of the sexual energy, and so now we think that that is what is required to feel the satisfaction that we need in order to be able to let go of this urge. But through sex, without orgasm, we can actually raise the sexual energy through the spine, through the body, and direct it towards our goals. This form of release, which isn't actually releasing the energy, but transmuting it and repurposing it to create, this form of release is actually satisfying to the sexual craving. However, being in lust and having this desire for release means that we are constantly depleting ourselves of our most vital energy. And so this leads into losing the energy instead of converting it. The issue with losing it is that we don't have the ability to then convert it. And the conversion of it into something positive, into its more subtle form, is what can have amazing health benefits, amazing mental benefits, and an incredible ability to progress and pursue your goals, or progress towards and then pursue your goals. Losing the energy is basically just a net loss. Like, we do not gain anything positive from losing this energy. I know there's going to be some people arguing with that point, but you can argue all you want. I know for a fact there are zero positives associated with releasing this energy. There are some people who cope by saying that, oh, it's necessary from time to time, but that just isn't true. You simply aren't strong enough to contain and repurpose it. And so what I would say to anybody who is wondering why I believe so strongly that orgasm isn't good for you, it's because all of the sexual energy that you release could have been converted and transmuted, and therefore could have fueled your body, your being, your vessel, your mind, your goals, and your pursuit towards them. And so by losing it, you are gaining absolutely nothing. But by holding it, you only ever have the ability to benefit from that, right? You only ever have the ability to benefit from it, because even if you don't learn to directly transmute it, you will naturally transmute some of this energy. And then if you learn to consciously transmute your energy, you can transmute all of it, contain all of it, and then repurpose all of it. And that is a very powerful state to be in, because you can literally create anything from that state. You can become anything. You can progress in any goal you want. You can learn any skill. You can master any skill. You can build any type of business. You can make any amount of money. You can live in any type of reality you want, so long as you choose and you work in that direction. And with this energy backing you, it just happens so naturally, right? All of this stuff happens naturally. Growth happens naturally. And so the last issue is becoming trapped in the loop of emotional dysregulation. So when you're in this loop of emotional dysregulation, you feel the intensity of the emotions of the sexual urge, and then you have to give into it because you don't have any control over these emotions, right? And this bleeds out into other areas of life. When you feel angry, you have little ability to control that anger, and so therefore you lash out, right? When you feel upset about something, you lash out back at yourself, right? If you messed up something, you have the ability to say that you are a problem, right? Diss on yourself, say negative things about yourself, and therefore you're feeding into these negative emotions. With emotional regulation, however, For example, if I fail at something, I don't I don't even have the capacity to like be upset about it. I literally just want to keep moving forward in the direction I need to go. And so what I do is I just naturally work through the problem in front of me instead of getting stuck on it, dwelling on it, so on and so forth. So that's a very key factor, is that a lot of children don't have, and not children, but teenagers rather, don't have a lot of emotional regulation due to this issue, right? If they would stop using porn, I guarantee a lot of these kids who have this emotional problem wouldn't have the same issue with it. And obviously there's more things than just porn nowadays. A lot of kids are smoking weed, which feeds into the same issue, the emotional dysregulation. But a lot of times they go hand in hand, and that's the issue with it, is a lot of times most of the addictions that people have are mostly there due to the fact that they have other addictions, right? So if you have a porn addiction, you're more likely to have addiction to nicotine, weed, social media, so on and so forth. So if you remove the key player, which I do believe is porn, if you remove the key player, well, then all of the rest of them dissolve, right? And obviously you have to stop feeding the lust, you have to stop feeding the desire for these things. But if you stop feeding it, it will eventually starve out and die. And what happens with ego, when we kill ego, its energy becomes repurposed and redirected towards whatever it is we actually want to become. So that is all I have for this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed. If you benefited in any capacity, or if you learned something new, please go ahead and comment that down below. And if you enjoyed the video, leave a like. And if you want to see more like it, of course, subscribe. But that is all from me. For those of you who want to join the Academy of Self-Mastery and want to get early access to the program, first link in the description. And if you have any questions about any of my other services, second link in the description. Go ahead and DM me on Instagram. But that is all I got for you guys, and I'm out of here. Peace.